Hello and welcome to the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust meeting of Thursday, February 9th, 2023 at 9 a.m. We are broadcasting from Memorial Hall in Town Hall. This meeting is being broadcast and recorded by Westborough TV. Call to order, approval of minutes. We had, actually, we're going to have two sets of minutes that we need to review. One is our minutes from January 12th, which was our regularly scheduled January meeting, and then we do have an executive session, which we will take up at the end of this meeting when we go into executive session. Any corrections, changes, additions to the minutes of January 12th, 2000? And I have one correction, but we'll go around.
I just have one tiny little
Yeah.
thing. On page 1, the very last line, the Recreation Commission was not supported.
I'm sorry, the last point,
Supportive.
Supported, it should be, I think, supportive.
but the recreation was not
Not supportive.
supportive.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay, I have one minor correction. At the very, very, very top, I think it should read January 12th, 2023.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good
That's a
catch.
good one.
2003, yeah, didn't even see it.
Yeah, we went in the Wayback Machine. Okay. Any other corrections or additions? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion for acceptance.
So moved.
All right, and I see a second from Kate. So go to I think we just need to do a regular hand vote.
Yep,
All
no
those in
consumption.
favor? Hands and aye. Looks
Six.
like we have 6 here, 6 in attendance and 6 in favor. Thank you. RFP on Baylor Avenue, I saw you sent
No,
out an
there's
email.
another set of minutes, 12, public session from 12:14, the open
Oh,
session.
I apologize. On 12/14?
Yeah, it was in the packet. It's one page.
Basically says we're going into executive session, right?
Yes.
Well,
Motion to approve.
I mean, I have the 14th. I
Second.
don't have,
What's
did
got-
you include it all together?
Yeah, there's stuff in the packet after the agenda.
Yeah, no, I know. I did not get a chance to review that myself, but I will ask others. I will abstain. But anyone have any corrections to the minutes of January?
December 14th,
December 14th.
yes.
Yes, that I
2023.
do have. I thought you said January. Yes, we had a meeting to, review, edit the RFP. That was the main activity at that meeting. It was a 7 p.m. remote meeting.
Yes.
Any corrections, additions to that? Seeing none, move for, or I'll request a,
Take the motion.
okay, I saw Kate and then see Nancy. All right, all those in favor? All right, those are adopted December 14th. Thank you, Alan. All right, moving on, we do have a lot to cover, so I appreciate people's there. All right, update on the request for proposal for Baylor Avenue, which, Alan, maybe you can take it up. I know you emailed out to Sharon.
Right, so, town council is led by Sharon, but there's a team behind her, but when it comes to.
Sharon Everett, I'm sorry.
Everett, yes.
Yeah, just so,
Sharon Everett, right.
for public.
She's been out of office on an unrelated matter, but even so, she's been working on this. So she was hoping to have her comments completed by Monday, that she's not quite there yet. So we reached out to see, get timing and see if she has any interim questions or issues we can start to answer or address.
Right.
And
And
we'll
that was
keep it
just sent
posted.
last night, I think.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
from
so we
a,
don't expect to hear.
So from a timing standpoint, I'll keep the trustees advised is when we hear back, and then we can determine whether we want to schedule a special meet, depending on the timing. Is it worthwhile scheduling an additional meeting to review and finalize that so it can be issued, or it waits till our meeting in March?
Right, yeah, depending upon the timing, I agree with Alan and anybody else that, given, you know, as weather improves, you know, the sooner we get this out, the sooner this construction may be able to start. So, I think we've done a pretty good job. Hopefully, we don't come back with a lot of issues, from council. And we'll see where it goes, and we'll keep people informed. Thank you, Alan. Endicott Road, I put this in here, Hank, just
Yeah.
because I emailed you, and I was a little, I assumed that the rec commission, if you will, was, you know, sort of under their control completely,
Well,
but.
I mean, the town land's owned by the select board.
Right.
Right, and it's not given to anybody, but
Right.
it's not, I mean, the town land is not, with the exception, to my knowledge, of the Conservation Commission, which if you give land to the Conservation Commission, you actually transfer it to them, and to take it back, you have to go through the state legislature. So that's a pretty much, but otherwise, the town owns the land, and the select board gets to decide how it's used.
Okay.
I mean, the rec director had agreed that they had no use for, they had no plans for the land in the foreseeable future, as far as she could see. The commission initially was just uncomfortable, but didn't, went back to the commission a second time at their request, and they all came and said, no, my editorial version of their concerns were, it's so difficult to acquire land for any purpose that even though we don't have any clear purpose for it, we'll use it for something probably, and we don't want to give it up.
We don't want to, yeah, we don't want to release it.
And, oh, by the way, it's probably not a good place for affordable housing, in their opinion. Second step, I said, okay, fine, and I went to, I took some time, but I arranged a meeting with the chair of the ZBA, the community relations director, who also happens to be the chief building inspector, and with the town planner, to say, hey, guys, if we proceed with this proposal, what kind of a process do we have to follow? What will be the issues in trying to get permitting? And they kind of said, well, if you try to, you could permit it through the ZBA. You're going to need a number of variances, 3 or 4 variances, street space, size,
Yep,
and any
yep.
number of things, multifamily and single-family area. Oh, by the way, the land is currently zoned M1, so that's municipal.
Right.
It has to be rezoned. It's not, technically, if the town transfers the land to you, the zoning reverts to the surrounding zoning or the prior
whatever.
zoning. In this case, it would revert to R. But it's very unlikely that you're gonna get variances through the ZBA, because the ZBA's position has to be, if they grant variances to the housing trust, they have to grant similar variances to any other developer on similar terms and conditions for similar purposes, right? So that would be difficult. We
For
talked
similar
about-
I'm sorry to
Right, I mean,
interrupt.
for-
When you
for-
say
I mean,
similar purposes,
well,
does that mean for affordable housing?
For a similar kind of piece of land, doesn't,
Okay.
it doesn't mean for affordable housing necessarily, but for similar kinds of projects on similar properties. I mean, they gotta apply the same rules, the same guidelines and rules and judgments to everybody within reason. They also said that even if the ZBA was to grant you a variance, if any of the abutters decided that they wanted to take you to land court, the history with land court is abutters usually win and ZBAs usually lose. So that was pretty discouraging from a ZBA process. I said, well, what about a friendly 40B?
Right.
And they said, well, the town has no history with a friendly 40B in the environment where they're well over the 10%. So that, there's no guidelines for how the town would make those kinds of decisions. And this is a terrible piece of property to try and use to establish those guidelines. There's, so many variances, so many impediments. I walked away with I believe, a message that said, you guys want to try it, you can. The probability of success is, is in the 10, 20%, and it's going to be very difficult. So, we support what you're trying to do. Go find another piece of land. That was sort of-
And
that's
what
my
pieces of land did
interpretation.
they
That sounds like-
proffer?
Oh, they didn't prefer it. No, I mean,
Oh,
they
okay.
understand. I mean, they fully understand that there's a substantial problem here, but given that you're trying to pioneer a number of issues that the community hasn't dealt with before, you don't want to have a failure first time out.
Right, okay.
So-
I'm gonna, before I editorialize, just wanna, anything else, Hank?
Nope.
Thanks for all your work you've been doing on that. Any discussion? Why don't we start with Kate and we'll go this way? Thoughts?
I'm discouraged. I understand your last point there, Hank, about we don't want our first project here to be a failure. So the previous points around the others have brought forward about.
Do you have a mic? Can
Oh,
you
yeah,
move
you
your
can-
mic, please?
For the viewing public.
For the viewing public,
large
yes.
viewing public.
I think the whole point, what's discouraging to me is we've never done this before sort of thing, and so it's going to be hard to do. That's what we're supposed to be doing, is we're supposed to be doing hard things. So that part is really, really frustrating and discouraging to me. I also want to be successful, so I don't want to, I don't know. I'm editorializing. I have nothing else to
No,
add.
that's why we're here.
Besides, and except for a big thank you to Hank for continuing to pursue this, because it sounds like it's been a frustrating process for you, so.
All right, Nancy, thoughts?
Well, I just want to echo that a little bit. I understand that this is the opinion of two people?
Well, three. I mean,
Three.
the chair of the ZBA.
Yep.
The town planner, basically representing the planning board, and the director of community development, where the building department is housed inside of community
Right.
development.
Well, I guess the question for me is, how global is this negative view going to be? Yeah, right, so maybe it's not Endicott. Is it going to be like anytime we go to them to say, we have this leftover property currently zoned something, we're gonna hear the same speech? I'm just wondering,
So
yeah.
I think it would be,
All right, Hank's spoken, so yeah,
Yeah.
you go. Anything else?
No,
Nancy?
I just
Yep,
did,
Alan.
Yeah.
I'm
I-
trying to parse it out.
I think it would be beneficial to have a conversation with the chair of the planning board
I'm all,
as a next
with
step on the
Mark?
project, with Mark Silverberg as chair
Okay.
of the planning board,
Sure.
as a next step on the project.
Okay.
As this, coming
Is
to
it-
this meeting,
it's-
or us going to their meeting? Or as an
I-
independent conversation?
I think it can be an independent conversation, much around, because it would, if this were gonna be a friendly 40B, it is the planning board, not the town planner, it's the planning board who would usher that process. And, the reality is, 40B is 40B, whether it's friendly or not. The difference between a friendly and a hostile 40B is whether the town supports
Yeah.
the plan that the developer's bringing forward, right? And,
And encourages and support, yeah.
you know, and it's a cooperative discussion as opposed to developer coming in and saying, oh, you're below the 10%, we're gonna do this and you can't stop me.
Yeah.
Which is, yes, it's a different negotiating style, but as Kate pointed out, the point of the trust is to figure out how to do these types of projects and to make these types of projects happen. And so if the planning board feels it's not feasible for a number of reasons, then that's one issue. But it's the planning board who runs that process.
Okay.
And I also think, with the coming change in town planner,
Right, yeah. Jim's retiring.
it's a matter, I think our request to the planning board would be to get them as a board to step forward and take leadership and and if they feel this is in any way a viable project, to drive it forward with us.
I concur with Alan's approach, definitely, to reach out and
Have a
kind of
conversation, Lisa?
Yeah, have a civil conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, these
just-
are all good people.
Yeah, oh,
Oh,
absolutely.
yeah, no, Mark's easy.
And see where their thoughts are,
Okay,
in unison with ours.
okay.
I was just gonna say, I know that this might be on our agenda later, but, you know, we talked about briefly at our last meeting, having a housing forum where we bring stakeholders together. And I think, you know, we were thinking specifically in terms of the
Yeah,
affordable.
I didn't attend, so I,
Oh, right, okay. So, but we were thinking specifically the Housing Authority and also the Housing Partnership Committee
yep.
as three entities that, you know, have a similar mission and vision here. But I'm wondering if it might make sense to, you know, bring the planning board and others to that housing forum table to kind of have a larger discussion here about, we need to make, we as a town, as a community, we have said that we have a commitment to building more affordable housing and creating more affordable housing. So how are we going to do that together? And creating a community conversation around that rather than, I mean, I also agree that like having offline conversations and just to kind of like feel them out and kind of have those civil conversations is really great, but also to kind of have that public discourse around how we're going to actually make this happen,
Okay.
I think might be valuable.
All right. All right, usually the proper way in a meeting is the chair speaks last, so is,
Doesn't matter.
well, no, it doesn't, it's just, it's a courtesy. Whether we are above or below 10%, I believe it's relevant only to the extent of a zoning, you know, a 40B coming in and being able to do it. People in this town are hurting badly. There is not affordable housing sufficient, particularly for seniors, and whether we need it at 12% or 13% or 14%, it should be whatever is appropriate, okay? And using that, well, we're above 10%, so, you know, let's not worry about those people that can't afford to move to town because, too bad, so sad. That's my personal view. It's a little bit more of a, how should we, as a town, how should we operate? The town made it very clear through the master plan, they want more affordable housing. They want more affordable housing, okay? And Hank's been working with the master plan committee, and later on, in our copious spare time, might get a few words from you. But I would throw that out, okay? Because we gotta remember, Pulte is continuing to build without any affordable units being part of their construction per an agreement, you know, that we came to. And we'll talk about that. But, as more and more of those are built, it's gonna drive down, I believe we'll be at 11.3% was the last number I saw of affordability
Getting
in
close.
town, once they're fully built out, pending any other, you know, developments that would then add back up, you know, 40B or affordable units. Be that as it may. I agree, having a discussion, we're not a big town. It's good working together with people, communicating. Given that this is the chair, these are elected officials, it is the chair of the, as we were talking, the chair of the planning board, I would recommend that Alan sit down and a cup of coffee. I'm sorry, I heard Ken suggest that under his breath.
That's
No,
fine.
only kidding. Would you be willing to,
Yeah.
you sort of bring up, we really need to be conscious of the fact that we have a problem. Westborough is large, I'll use the word largely built out, and I'm gonna talk, because I did get a dump of every parcel in town from the assessor. There's not a lot of land laying around. There's a lot of open land, but it's Conservation Commission land. So I think doing that and trying to get people to understand we have a problem. People can't afford to live here. And people have seen that we're looking at over $800 increase in taxes in the coming year if all the articles and budget pass. You know, which is, I'll say unheard of. All right. That's my 2 cents. So would you be willing to do that, Alan?
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on, we have town meeting warrant article that Alan has drafted, and it is in the version of, and we do have version, I think 5 is the latest one, we're Article 16. It basically reads, Article 16, transfer to Affordable Housing Trust Fund, AFC, question or warrant, to see if the town will vote to transfer the sum of $600,000 funds from the stabilization fund mitigation to the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust, or take any other action thereof. It then explains, and I'm going to turn it over to Alan, a little bit of the background and why, or
So, actually.
How this
I
is gonna
realize
work.
that this-
yeah, there is a slideshow, 6, 7 thing slideshow.
Bring it up so folks can see.
Oh.
Is that turning on now?
Yep. I've got it here too.
I love it when the technology works.
I can't
All right, so
read
now,
that, though.
all you good lookers here can read that.
That's- But I'm gonna do something a little better than
I got it
that.
right here.
Okay. So I'll walk very briefly, quickly, I'll walk through the presentation.
Yeah.
I made last evening.
Right, you
to
made it to the planning board.
Who, with all but one member present, voted unanimously to support
4-0.
the article. So the article reads as Ed said, to see if the town will vote to transfer the sum of $600,000 from the stabilization fund, parentheses, mitigation, close parentheses, to the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust, or take any other action thereon. The background on this is pretty straightforward. This is more of an administrative action than anything else. In September of 2018, Pulte Homes New England LLC was granted a special permit, reference numbers 2018-1, for Del Webb at Chauncey Lake. This was done by the planning board. The permit includes mitigation requirements to either build 25 affordable units of housing within 3 years, or pay the town a total of $1,400,000 to be used for the construction of affordable housing. The payment schedule for that 1.4 million would be that 400,000 would be due on the 3-year deadline, and $200,000 would be provided annually each year thereafter for 5 years. If the project is built faster than the originally proposed schedule, any balance on this amount is due before a building permit could be issued for the final building to be constructed. Per the special permit, this is a quote, "This money will be designated for the construction of affordable housing and must be deposited in a separate town account established for this purpose." This wording was put in because this special permit was issued before the existence of the housing trust. And the town had, absent this, the money would have gone into the general fund and not be spent and fall to free cash. And it's a whole different process to then segregate it. So Pulte hasn't built 25 units. They chose to pay the mitigation. The town has received the first 2 payments, total of $600,000. They are in the stabilization fund mitigation, which is a general it's a stabilization fund designed to collect mitigation dollars for any purpose. So it does not meet the requirements of a separate fund specifically for the purpose of creating affordable housing. So transferring the funds to the trust meets the town's commitment and obligation under the special permit. We would hold those funds for affordable housing construction. And one of the questions from the planning board is, does this mean new construction, or if we rehabbed or converted property? Mark Silverberg, who was on the planning board at that time, the current chair, pointed out that it was really about creation. That so long as we're creating net new SHI qualified units, it meets the criteria and the intent of the special permit. So for example, acquiring a commercial building and converting it to residential, having 25 SHI units in it would be a project that these funds could be used for. It does mean that we as a trust could not use this, for example, for, subsidy loans as part of a first-time homebuyer program, or for, other projects and things we might do other than specifically creating new affordable housing units.
But it would cover Baylor Avenue since that is construction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could,
Yeah.
the funds could be used for that. I mean, it's really intended for a project that would create.
That would create
Those
new
replacement
housing.
units.
ability
And
for-
do that, but, there's nothing to say that the trust couldn't, acquire a market rate apartment building and convert it.
Right.
And increase the number of
Yep.
affordable units to add those 25 units, right? And so it'll, the money will continue to come to the trust from that, and we'll have it to be able to use for that purpose. Our ask was the vote of support, which they
This
made
was to the,
to the planning board.
to the planning board.
The chair of the planning board, confirmed that he would be more than happy to stand on the floor of town meeting and reinforce that this transfer actually helps the town meet its legal obligations under the special permit, as well as the planning board supporting it. So
If this didn't pass, it would just stay in stabilization fund?
it would just stay in the stabilization fund.
there.
And then we would ask again at another time, because ultimately we wouldn't be able to do anything in the town.
Yes.
But like, could the town get sued? Or
If-
could somebody sue the town or something like that?
If, in theory, if Pulte wanted to, they could go to court saying the town didn't meet its obligation on the special permit, we don't owe any more money there.
Got it.
Right.
Since you
That we
didn't,
don't-
since you failed to honor your part of the agreement.
Saying that, well, that is a path for them. There's absolutely no indication that Pulte would ever even consider that. They're a very good partner, a very responsible
Yeah.
developer. They work very cooperatively with the town. But this change should be, this change of location of the funds should be made.
Yeah.
To be compliant.
And it
What-
doesn't impact the taxpayer at all?
No.
This doesn't,
This is,
yeah.
no, this is money coming from Pulte, allocated purely for, as it indicates, the development of affordable housing. It doesn't help, hurt, or otherwise affect taxpayers.
But
Except-
I mean, technically, it has a minor issue, is that town meeting loses control of exactly and precisely what kind of and location, et cetera, of affordable housing, and who does the affordable housing provision. Because, once we get it, we spend it without any town meeting vote. Once
I
we
keep
get it.
going and I'll
I mean,
respond.
Once we get it, once the money's under the housing trust, we have the authority to use it in accordance with the guidelines, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Okay.
However, I mean, one thing we ought to think of, is there anybody else, any other town entity who might want to have control of the funds, or in which case town meeting might want to keep control because some other entity comes forward and says, oh, no, it's too, I don't want to give it to the housing authority, they have too much, whatever, right?
Affordable Housing Trust.
Affordable housing trust, right?
So
Yeah,
we-
they could say, hey, give it to the housing authority, right? I mean,
They could.
I don't think they will, but.
The only other entity able to construct or create affordable housing would be the housing authority.
Well, I mean, a third-party developer could come in and say, I want to go to town meeting and ask for the money.
But it has to be in a special
Because
town.
because I'm going to
account,
build
though.
affordable housing, right?
Right, and we'd have to be affordable housing, and we may say,
I
come
don't-
on board.
Right, so,
I don't think anybody would do that, but.
Right, but-
That would be the reason the voters, I mean, that would be one reason voters might want to keep control of the funds.
if town meeting wanted to have the town maintain control, so we gotta be careful how you phrase this, right? The housing authority and the trust are a part of the town.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we are separate legal entities, we're still under the municipal agency of the town. But if town meetings decide they don't want to transfer the funds to the trust, then town meeting should create a separate stabilization fund,
Okay.
which isn't
Not
on
on
the
the
warrant,
agenda, I
and
understand.
could not be, that, I believe the town moderator said that's too big of divergence
Yeah, no,
from the article to do at town meeting, that would
Right.
wait till, have to wait till fall
Have to
town
wait
meeting.
for another
And
article.
then, when you create a stabilization fund, you cannot move money into a stabilization fund within the fiscal year that it's created,
Correct.
which means the money wouldn't transfer
that.
until October of 2024 at the earliest.
Okay.
So, it's a complicated alternative.
Right.
I don't,
I don't see that
I
happening.
don't see, I don't see people being upset with
But it's good
this.
to run through the
Yes.
questions.
It's, you know, it's putting money in one of the impetuses even for the concept of having a housing trust was that the planning board struck this mitigation deal, and then it's like, okay, now where does the money go? Oh, this would go into a housing trust, we don't have one of those, we should maybe think about that. It's part of the impetus that started this whole process, so, you know, I'm comfortable with, I'm confident that town meeting will say that, oh, this is an administrative action, and it's putting the money where it's supposed to go, the town's meeting its obligations under the agreement.
And it will be presented, I'll do the presentation with Alan standing behind me if bullets fly, which they won't. The benefit of moving it now is, first of all, we never know when an opportunity might arise where we could find a owner of a building that we say, oh, this would be great to convert. And they say, yeah, and I want to close in 2 months,
Want to close before the end of the tax year?
or whatever. Us being able to tap that money, probably with merely consent, if it's significant enough, of select board, gives us that flexibility. We don't need to get into that unless somebody brings it up.
Yep.
Okay, like if they say, well, why don't we just leave it there until you need it? We go, well, first of all, you know, you would need to then call a special town meeting, transfer the funds, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So we've been good stewards so far in the programs we've done, and that would be the argument. I have a question, and I've tried to, when we set up the trust, we were funded an initial 1.2 million.
648,000 was the initial funding. We've subsequently gotten an
And
additional.
then
1.2.
subsequently,
Yeah.
okay, but it all came
Right, that's,
together.
Yes.
At one time. Was that for their, I just want to make sure we all understand, so that if
So the-
questions come up, let's follow
There-
the money.
there are two buckets of money from Pulte Development for affordable housing.
Right.
The 1.4 million we're talking about today is in the original special permit
Right.
as part of the original agreement. Subsequent to that, the ruling from DHCD about age restriction, eligibility for SHI, and the loss of the 70 affordable units that were part of the project, resulted in the $9 million from Pulte to be paid as each building gets its certificate of occupancy. That is, it's technically not mitigation, it's a condition tied to the variance, the
Variance.
zoning variance, granted by the zoning board of appeals.
For
so-
comprehend,
It's not comprehensive, it's just, they got variances, so that they could from the special permit, so they can continue to build.
Right.
So that $9 million, basically, Pulte asked for the variance, negotiated with the town, ended up, hey, if we give you $9 million divided by 14 as we finish each building, is that sufficient,
600.
for you to release us from the requirement in the special permit? And the town said yes, and the planning board said yes. And so when Pulte went to the ZBA, they had letters of support for that decision. So it wasn't a very contentious discussion. And so just those are two different, pieces of money. The $9 million is, the request from the town is that be for affordable housing and other projects for senior citizens. So there's a little flexibility in how the money's used. That money goes into its own separate stabilization fund that town meeting created.
Okay.
From that stabilization fund, the housing trust has received the first three payments that Pulte made.
Yeah, 9.
The first three
The
payments.
1
So-
point-
So it's a little over $1.9 million.
Yeah.
$1.8 million in
1.8.
total. Pulte has subsequently made 2 additional payments. as
Right, they
certificate
completed
of
another
occupancies
couple of buildings.
For buildings 4 and 5 have been completed. And so that stabilization fund will continue to grow as we have use or anticipate use for funds. We could go back to town meeting for more of that.
Okay.
as well.
Basically, in a nutshell, Pulte was gonna build these, all great and wonderful. They were gonna have the appropriate percentage were gonna be affordable, at 55 plus. I think people may be familiar with this. The state came back and said, time out, if it's gonna be affordable, you have to allow families in. If it's 62 plus, then it can be purely seniors. And the town went back and forth, and, Pulte, you should have known this, what's the issue, blah, 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 blah.
Well, it wasn't the reality is there are, at the time of the decision from DHCD, there were 6 projects in Massachusetts permitted that way. 3 of the projects were allowed to proceed at 55 plus, no one under 18. 3 of the projects, DHCD said no.
Yeah, so,
They changed their application of policy
in the middle of,
as. in the
no
middle of these-
grandfathering, no,
Right,
this
so
will start at a future date.
It's not anything that, Pulte expected.
No,
I mean,
I agree.
or
It
the
was,
town, but that it, and yes, there were efforts to negotiate with DHCD. And
which of course.
here we are.
Yeah.
So anyhow,
And here's the result, yeah.
I got one more question.
yes.
What will our cash on the balance sheet look like when we add this to what we have?
I should get actually, I should have asked for
I
an
mean, I
end
don't
of
care what
date.
you answer, but you ought to be prepared to answer that
Yes,
question. 'cause
okay,
Yeah.
it'll be, with this 600, will be
it'd be
about
2 million
1.7 or
yeah,
so.
Close to 2 million, and. Be close to 2 million, just kind of.
Yeah,
We'll
not
be
quite,
slightly
because
over.
Big mental guess here.
we've gone down with the Sarah numbers, that was a few hundred thousand, et cetera.
Yep.
I will, let me make a note to myself, I will ask Leah for an up-to-date balance.
Kind of a balance,
Yeah.
I always think of it as a balance sheet, but
Well,
whatever.
yeah, that's what I'm saying,
Financial
what our
report.
current balance is.
Yeah.
Ask Leah, and she's great about getting this last time I asked her, and I did submit that to people.
No, I mean, I think
Ask Leah for current,
somebody, I would
balance.
expect the finance committee may ask, somebody at town meeting may ask. I
and
don't
we're
know.
going before, Finance Committee with this on the 14th.
13th. 14th is the select board.
I'm sorry, Select Board.
Yes,
The 13th is the,
right.
keep me,
And I will update the presentation so AFC knows that the planning board says yes.
yes.
I mean,
So,
Just for ourselves, I mean, we have we're very fortunate as a housing trust, we have a substantial pool of funds.
Yeah.
That we, at our disposal, that you know, we can do something with.
Later on the agenda, we'll talk about more ways to spend it.
All right.
More ideas. Okay.
All right, I'm saying for current balance of just the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Try to remember to do that right before I leave today. Okay, the wastewater reallocation effort, I sent off something, to Sheila, she sent me to Chris never got back to me, whatever. There is information on the website, but there is yet to be an article. As far as I know, the last I saw, it was a placeholder on 2 articles for the I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Stormwater drainage.
Right.
That's stormwater drainage.
Right. So
Wastewater reallocation report.
So-
It all revolves around DPW anyhow.
right, so the wastewater reallocation effort is spearheaded by the DPW. It is moving at the speed of Mass DEP, Department of Environmental Protection. It's their process. Director Payant did recently present to the Select Board as part of his presentations, generally around budget and warrant articles. He was asked about the status. The actual entire process for coming up with a new wastewater management plan, the last time the town did it, it took 12 years. However, pieces get released and approved interim. The reallocation to multifamily affordable, to multifamily housing is the top priority that he's working on with DEP. And original expectation was that we might have guidance this quarter. It may not happen until sometime next quarter, sort of the general sense of how fast or not so fast the process is moving with DEP.
Right.
But he's
doing whatever he can.
He's doing whatever
Yeah.
he can. It is his priority. He is well aware that, the work of us as a trust is hampered by the uncertainty.
Significantly. I mean,
Yeah.
we can't build anything of size unless we come up with not a solution, but we would build something, we would have to provide our own septic, as they did up in Mount Pleasant, and which we prefer not to get involved in that, but I don't know. It's something, once again, we should be aware of. It was put in what we call the annual report. I sent it out to everybody. Did mention we were hopeful we would hear this quarter, and that was about it. But basically, building any units of size or any buildings of size, with the number of units, we're sort of stuck. All right. I have Rogers Road update. Hank, any questions on what Alan just presented? I mean, we're waiting. Hurry up and wait. Rogers Road, I'm just looking at time here. We're
Just for
pretty good.
update to folks, I mean, we became aware, Alan saw it in some notifications, the Acton Housing Authority received approval they received funding, and they have a project going to build, I think it's 41 units of affordable housing under the Housing Authority in Acton. We have been told by the Westborough Housing Authority that, that the state's not funding and not supporting municipal housing authorities building new units and such. Acton Housing Authority's gotten funding from the state, at least $7 million, possibly more, a couple of different grants, to build 41 units up there on a 5-acre plot that they have. They're also getting funding from a variety of other sources beside the state. I've initiated a conversation with the executive director of the Housing Authority. We're trying to get up a meeting with the executive director.
Acton's.
Executive director of the Acton Housing
Let's be
Authority.
clear on
To
which town.
get up, to have a conversation about, gee, how'd you put the project together? How'd you get approval? Just learn what we can learn, and then decide what to do next. I don't know if anybody's received an invite for a doodle invite?
So-
Okay, if you have,
I swear I filled this out, so I wanted to just publicly apologize, because I swear I filled this out, and then I got the doodle,
yeah,
and then I got a reminder saying, please fill out the doodle, and I was like, I already filled out the doodle.
okay.
So-
You're on the list.
I'll use a different process.
So,
use
but
a
it
more-
I
it
didn't
could
get
be
it
me
till-
that I did not submit, I apologize.
That's all right, no,
All right,
I'll
so
go sort out.
I saw your saying, yes, I will join you, or I'm interested in this.
Yes,
I'll do another pass at it.
All right,
So we'll
so
have a
ca-
meeting, but along with that, I mean, based on, a variety of conversations with the Westborough Housing Authority, how things have been progressing, I would suggest that our posture on the project has gotta be that we're gonna have to lead it. And
We're gonna have
we
to.
as a housing trust are gonna need to take the leadership role.
To
and-
push on it.
And not just pushing, we're gonna have to actually put together proposals.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to formulate proposals that make sense to us, and then take them to the Housing Authority Board and say, gee, do you like proposal 1, 2, or 3, sort of thing, and get them,
Good
and then
approach.
get them
So-
on board.
So,
I was reluctant to do that, because that's a lot of work, but we're not gonna get there if we don't do it.
and some positive news, just related to the Westborough Housing Authority, that, Maureen Johnson
Yes.
Sure.
has been appointed, was, right before his exit, was appointed by Governor Baker's office to fill the gubernatorial seat
Great.
on the Housing Authority.
Oh, super.
So, they now have a full
I
five,
know her.
number of members
so-
of the board, and, those who know Maureen and her volunteer involvement in the community.
Is outstanding.
She's outstanding, she's thoughtful, she's committed to the town, and she is a person of action. And so, a fellow select board member who's very closely related to Maureen suggested I reach out and say hi. And so
I might even drop as chair a note congratulating
Yeah,
her.
yeah,
But
and
I think
I will reach
hearing
out.
no dissent, I will.
Seconded?
I will reach out, and so.
Why don't you reach out? I'll send a note.
You should send a note as well. I'll reach out, to have an initial conversation with her, but I am hopeful that this means we'll have an additional advocate for considering options.
Right.
Knowing that the Housing Authority is an operational board and under, very, stringent and limiting budget constraints
Yeah.
by the nature of the authority, one
don't have
thought
a-
that
yep.
could be worth exploring would be, I believe technically would be considered an intermunicipal agreement, because it's an agreement between two municipal entities, where they could potentially just delegate to the trust the authority to manage,
Propose and
well,
manage.
entirely run a project
Yeah.
Yep.
on that property. And so,
Do you know when that appointment was done?
I don't know the exact
Was it
timing of it.
recent?
This was, it was recent. It was right before Governor Baker left office, so.
Okay, so before the end of the year,
Yeah.
or
It was a-
right at the end
it
of the
was
year.
one of
so-
those final parting shots that governors do.
Yep.
before they s-
But,
before they
you know,
step out of the corner
he
office.
didn't give me the pardon I requested, so.
There you go.
All right, so I'll send a note of congratulations to Maureen on appointment to the Housing Authority. Yeah, I know Maureen quite well. She and Ian both were honored as the Good Scout
Yes.
recipients last year.
Yep.
Okay, so basically the action item, Hank and.
We're gonna set a meeting up, and we'll talk to those folks, and then,
Right,
you know,
you and
but,
Kate are the point people on
yeah,
this.
and in kind of in parallel with that, we need to start thinking about, and we're gonna have to take the initiative to make proposals.
I agree, yeah. Obviously, learning anything from Acton.
That will help us to get an
Yeah.
idea of where to start.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. It's
Yep.
a fact-finding
But
mission.
again, I mean, it's an interesting conversation, it's a learning experience, but if someone were to ask me, what do you wanna build and how much money do you need? I'd have to say, I don't have a clue.
I'll-
What can I put on 5 acres?
Well, you'll,
I would answer that, we want 40 to 70
Yeah, I
units of
understand.
62 plus
And whatever
affordable
that
housing.
costs.
Yeah, I mean, 40
And-
units is gonna cost you about $4 million to build. or
well, there
something
you
like
go,
that.
so I would ask for
But yeah,
five.
I mean, I think, I believe in the next month or two, I'll come back saying, hey, we need to hire an engineer to help us sort this thing out and come up with some rational
yeah.
proposals, right? So that's
Or,
just kind
or,
of preset expectations. That's
or,
where we're going,
or work with the housing authority, gain control and do
Right.
something similar.
right?
You know, one of the nice things, someone asked me why Baylor Avenue was our first project, given that's one unit. And don't we have grander aspirations? Yes, we do have very grand aspirations, but what Baylor Avenue gives the trust is the experience of working through the process.
Absolutely.
And we will have a template RFP for
Yep.
putting projects out to bid. And so,
Although in fairness, it was available, we're not gonna hold it
Well,
because it's
yes,
small.
yes.
I
Well,
mean,
yeah, I
you
mean,
know,
yeah, and it's-
why
it
is
was
it
also-
first?
it helped
It's
the town.
available.
and it does demonstrate that
Yeah.
one of the reasons for the trust to have funds in its account and available
Right.
is we can be opportunistic,
Right.
and move quickly.
Right.
So there we go.
And believe me, you've seen it, it can only improve the neighborhood, bring in hopefully first-time buyer, or at least one, and,
I told you, every time I was there doing business,
They'd love to
someone
see
would
it
stop and
cleaned
go,
up,
what are you
right?
doing? How long? Everybody is
I know.
enthusiastic about it. so,
I've had conversations with two other people, and
Yeah,
they're happy, and,
but let's get it moving, right? Yeah, that's it.
yeah, well, once we have the RFP, and we get a blessing and, get somebody, we'll put a banner up,
Yeah.
of
Opening
some
soon.
appropriate size in front of the house, renovation.
Like we do for high school graduates,
New home being built, a new affordable home being built,
Right.
thanks to, the Affordable Housing Trust and the good people of Westborough.
Apply.
All right, first-time buyer program,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
I'll put it up on the screen because nothing says good idea than print we can't read. It's too small to read. I can make it big, larger here. Okay, so in our strategic goals for our first few years, one of the, and part of the mission of the trust is not just affordable housing, affordable capital housing, but affordability for low and moderate income. And one tool in that is assisting first-time home buyers. The Massachusetts Housing Partnership has a program called One Mortgage, which is it's a fixed 30-year, 3% mortgage with no PMI, and down payment requirement as low as 3%. They did a pilot program with the Boston's equivalent of a housing trust, who committed $1 million in funds, where they provided families who qualified for the one mortgage or came close to qualifying with additional loans or grants to either increase the down payment or pay discount points to lower the mortgage rate below 3%, is a way of saving money. And the goal of the program is to get families at the top end of eligibility for affordability and those just above it, who are sort of in that gap between affordable housing and market rate, enough financial relief that they can afford to move into market rate homes at the low end of the market, right? And to get them into home ownership. And that program was successful enough that with funding from the federal and state governments, they've now rolled out a program. I believe I forget the exact number, but it's specifically for at this point, gateway cities. They're sort of working where down the demand curve based on population size. So for example, Worcester is considered a gateway city. If you're moving into the city of Worcester and you qualify or come close to qualifying for one mortgage, you can also apply for this additional level of first-time homebuyer program. And it effectively says the families aren't expecting to pay less, but what they can afford goes up, right? So where a family might have only been able to afford a market rate home at $350,000 with the subsidy that's gonna lower the interest rate over the life of mortgage and their monthly payment, they may be able to step into a $400,000 home, which opens up more inventory that they could look at and acquire. This was piloting a program like this. In our presentations at town meeting, we've talked about doing this, it's in our goals. We initially conceptually talked about allocating about $150,000 for an initial program, which would be a small-scale program, but may actually be appropriately sized given our community demographics. And so to start the process, we've drafted a conceptual plan.
Right.
And a couple of very brief definitions. I know everyone has this, hopefully had a chance to read it. First-time home buyer, using MHP's definition for their programs, it's someone who's not owned a home within the past 10 years. A resident is a legal resident of Westborough, of our community, and then qualifying household.
For how
Boston-
long a period?
Right, so as a resident, is a resident and has been a resident for at least the prior 12 months, or has been a resident for at least 2 of the past 4 years. The Boston program was a 3-year residency requirement. Our rental community, we don't have a sense of that's, you don't want to set the rules that sound reasonable, but then nobody qualifies, right? And obviously geographically, Boston's a much larger area that's more feasible. So we might want to adjust this and rethink this, but this was an initial stab. And then the other qualification I thought we would add, because one of the issues that the town has is, from an affordability standpoint, it is difficult for town employees to live in town. And so so we've created a definition of a town employee, and I'll get into why and how we include them in the program.
As opposed to a legal resident of Westborough.
Right, so,
Right.
They-
so-
You don't have to
right, so,
have been a resident,
Yeah.
You're
right,
a
so,
police officer, a young patrol officer that has to commute, 30 miles, 40 miles to
Right.
get here. Yeah, because that's all they can afford,
Right.
In rental,
Right.
to rent an apartment.
yeah. So, the program would have 3 types of assistant plans. And in setting it up, a lot of thought about loan versus grant. And from a trust sustainability standpoint, my thought was loan is better. But how do you do that in a way that works for the recipients of the aid? And so, in general, it is a 0%, 0 amortization loan that is simply due on sale or transfer of the property. So that, in effect, it's a grant. They get the money, there's no interest payment, there's no principal payment. When, at any point in time, if they sell or transfer or otherwise dispose of the property, that money is due back to the trust at that point. So the cost of the program to us is effectively the inflationary cost of money. So it makes it a relatively low-cost program. So we don't earn interest, we don't keep up with inflation, but we get the principal back. Those funds could then be reused or reallocated. The other component of doing this as a loan is how do we structure it in a way that it doesn't impede their ability as a homeowner. And that is why I'm suggesting we have that the loan in its authorship indicates that it is subordinate to the primary mortgage, any home equity line of credit they get approved for, as well as any lien from an SBA or other government-backed business loan program. And so we're saying that, yep, you owe this money, but it's really, even though technically it's a loan, it feels more like a grant. And what that does is it saves hassle, right? So if you have someone who moves into a market rate home and they're 6 years in and, they need a new furnace or something goes on and they're gonna open a home equity line to, pay for that and pay off over time, they would not have to come back to the trust at their cost and our cost and modify the loan agreement to make it subordinate.
So if they got a
Additionally, if they-
HELOC,
if-
let's say they went, they buy a small home or whatever,
Yeah,
child number 2, 3 comes along and they say, maybe we can bump out a bedroom. They could take a HELOC on that,
yeah.
and that would not affect
They,
the program.
right. And by being subordinate, what we're saying is if something happened and they were unable to meet their obligations,
Right.
we're still a secure creditor, but it's the order of who gets the proceeds
The
from
bank's
any,
gonna get it first.
from any foreclosure sale. So the primary mortgage holder would get it, the secondary mortgage holder would get it, and if they've
HELOC.
started a small business and took a 7A or a 504 loan from the SBA would have dibs.
How does it affect credit, though? Because it's
Um,
still,
That person's credit?
Yeah.
It shows as an obligation.
right,
It shows an obligation that's fully collateralized by the property. It has no financial obligation other than the value of the property.
The fact that they own a home, they're making mortgage payments,
I mean,
can only help them. I don't mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be similar to like a VA loan, which requires no money down. I mean, it is a debt for that, whatever the VA loan is, because there's no PMI, and you don't have to put any money down as a vet. But you can afford a much more expensive house than you could with a first-time home.
Right.
Yeah.
than you could if you had to take it completely out of your
Right,
pocket.
right.
From a credit perspective, the key thing you're doing is you're making the loan to the housing trust. You're making that not count, the amount that they owe to the housing trust still counts to them as equity in their home. So when they go looking for a HELOC, if they put down 2% and we put down 4%, their home equity is 6%. So when they go looking for a home equity loan, the bank looks and says, oh, okay, their equity's 6%, we can loan up to, I'm not sure how
Yeah,
HELOCs
whatever.
are capped, but somewhere around 6%
Oh,
will
that's
loan
good.
up to that kind of
Yeah,
amount, right?
because they have that equity and we can go grab it from them.
Otherwise, the bank would look at that and say, hey, you only have 2% equity. So, so how much am I gonna lend you, right?
Perfect, good question.
I mean,
And this,
But
banks get real sensitive to how much
Yeah.
equity you really have.
yeah.
And the amount of equity, I'm assuming we're gonna talk a deeded restriction on affordability.
well, this is allowing them to buy into market rate.
Yeah,
this
it's not
isn't part of our-
affordability as much
So
as,
it's resaleable at market rate then,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
yep, if all of a sudden
Okay.
the housing market booms,
So
I
this
just
isn't
wouldn't want to
part of-
affect credit scores,
Right.
in a way that would, somebody might have had good credit before and now they're at risk for poor credit because of a loan from us.
right,
No,
I think we can,
structure.
as part of moving forward with this, we'll be reaching out to the Mass Housing Partnership. They've said, yeah, we know you want to do it, but we're doing these other programs. We're not actually, the way this is structured is someone could come to us after they've been approved for the one mortgage and apply for the program. Our decision is independent of the MHP program itself. It's simply a prerequisite for us. But we could talk to them about it. I don't think they've had an issue with applicants' credit scores in the Boston program.
Okay.
Right.
I just,
In part-
What would
in-
MHP have to do? What would be their
So, well,
role in this?
well, one, they can provide guidance and management of the program. But
Okay.
let me walk through
Yeah, keep going.
the different components of the plan. Would be, Plan A is where we would provide the money to pay discount points on the mortgage. If you pay each point lowers the mortgage rate by
Right.
0.25%. We can take someone from a 3% down to a 2% mortgage, for example, which increases their buying power. The qualification there would be that they've qualified for that they have already qualified for one mortgage through that program, which has fiscal requirements. It actually has a credit score
Yeah.
requirement. It has some other factors. You have to take a
Maybe
homeowner's
some
course.
assets
There's
or-
actually a homeownership course you have to
Yep.
take that's offered by MHP. and then you go through one of their partner lenders to get a letter of approval, and then they go shopping. And for that program, the thought is that the amount we would give would be, the level of, the lesser of either 4 discount points for their specific mortgage, or 4% of the average price of a single-family home as published annually by the town assessor.
Okay, so let's say,
So currently, let me run through. So currently, the average home from our most recent
656.
is 656,000, which means the maximum benefit would be $26,269.52.
4% of that.
However, if the amount of the mortgage is, let's say, 500,000, then the benefit would be 4% of the 500,000 because we're paying the points,
Got it.
right? So it's the lesser,
20.
right? So this just gives a sense of what the maximum amount would be for that option. Plan, the
So that's,
second,
that's approach or plan
right,
A,
Okay.
right.
one
Right.
approach.
Okay, and just an FYI, the one mortgage program targets folks at roughly 80% AMI. Okay.
Right.
The second would be a down payment assistance program if we wanted to do this as well. The difference here is they are applying for the one mortgage program, and we offer the assistance that they can then use to show they've got the capital necessary to fully qualify for the one mortgage program. So this would be, therefore, this would be down payment assistance. And again, roughly the same
As
percentages.
opposed to
As opposed,
an interest bring down,
right.
buy
Sa-
down.
Right, same impact on what the monthly payment will be for the recipient household, for those we're providing the assistance to, but a different structure. This is where we need the conversation with Mass Housing Partnership to say, are you okay if we do this? What would this look like? What do you need from us? Is it something you'd honor, would help, right, with getting people into your one mortgage program? And they, I expect, will either say yes, no, or yes if you do X, Y, Z, and then we can decide if it's feasible for us. Okay, so Plan C is assistance for moderate income, maybe we take the term out, but for town employees. Here, it's that they are a town employee and their household income is less than 120% AMI for Eastern Worcester County. And again, it's the same down payment type of assistance, with, again, the same cap for the level of assistance that we have in the other programs. And again, the goal here is to help town employees be able to afford to move into homes here in Westborough.
Can I just ask a question on the town employment? I like the idea.
Yep.
But is there any requirement that they stay a town employee? Because I could see people applying to get this program, to get a house in Westborough, and then going to work for Hopkinton or going to work for Framingham. We do have turnover in the town, and that's, is that something we can protect against, or do we care to protect against?
That's,
or-
it's something I haven't explored deeply, that has to be
question.
explored. It's a
But you
great
could-
question.
You could trigger the loan on some amortization period.
You could just say, okay, if you do move out,
If
Within
you-
5
if you-
years or
you know,
something.
you-
yeah. and-
Not move out, if you
Oh.
change jobs, if you change
If
jobs.
you-
and-
I'm
terminate
sorry,
your
right,
employment.
right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
If you terminate your employment, other than for, you gotta separate voluntary
cause.
termination from cause termination. I don't know how to do
You know,
that,
from layoffs.
but if you voluntarily terminate you could then say, hey, the loan accelerates. It becomes a 10-year loan or a 5-year loan or whatever you wanna do.
Well, and I'm not even sure this is a concern. I mean, the idea is to get
Oh,
good people
it is.
in the
It
town. I'm
definitely
not
is. I mean-
necessarily saying we wanna,
You
was
don't
there
want-
discussion?
You don't want
There are
people
lot-
scamming you.
No,
But,
it's,
but also,
so
I don't know
there's-
if it is a scam, to be honest, I'm just throwing it out there,
so, no, but a spouse, I'm sorry to interrupt, it's very common, I shouldn't say very common, but, you could have, let's say somebody works in town and their spouse, partner works close by, and all of a sudden, the spouse gets a job at
Yep.
at distance, and they just say, this commute is killing us, can you go and, we're gonna have to move to make this
Well, in
work.
which case the loan would be paid back. So I'm
Well,
not,
the house would get paid off
right.
if they're gonna buy another house.
But they wouldn't
No, I'm
necessarily
sorry.
buy another
I'm
house.
thinking of, yeah, they are
Switch
no
jobs and
longer
don't
an
move.
employee because they took
Yeah,
a job. They may, yeah,
I'm not worried about anybody leaving.
Legitimate concern.
The selling the house, you know, because for whether you're a town employee or not, if you sell the house, we're gonna pay back.
Yes.
Right, so that's not an issue.
You're
Yeah,
worried that
right.
if someone's a town employee, they use the program, in 6 months or a year later, they take a job elsewhere,
Right.
they've taken advantage of
even
this.
if within Westborough.
But
Well,
I even
no,
have
just
to
not with the
wonder if
town.
I do
Just-
care, because
Huh?
maybe it's still affordable, right? This is still a person who's of a certain income.
Yeah.
I don't know,
It's-
you know?
That's something you're gonna have to have a conversation with the town leadership,
Yeah.
as to how do they feel about this kind of issue, what's their
Exactly.
position? 'Cause
It-
you're now
Exactly.
you're creating a compensation for employees, right?
Yeah.
So
It would be
so
taxable too.
how you do it, you need to do it in a way that the folks who manage compensation for our employees are okay with.
Yeah, I mean,
And-
yes,
It's
this
a
has to be done in a
benefit.
way that's acceptable
Right.
to
And fair and-
the management, you know, the management team of the town and
Right.
Who would that
cetera.
be? Is there,
It's-
there's a
it's
board that meets
consistent with our
once in a while.
personnel
and
policy.
the town manager, right, but
Yeah.
I don't know that this would affect,
Oh,
That's
this,
another,
this, in general, this shouldn't affect personnel policies, it shouldn't affect union negotiations, in part because we're quasi-independent.
We're
So
just trying to help people.
I understand your question.
But there needs to be
I
coordination.
understand where, I totally understand your
It-
question. And my opinion at this point in time is that if a person was a town employee and was not living in our town prior, but now, and so they come into work every day, okay, and they go to work and then they exit Westborough.
Right.
Okay? But now they are able to live in our town and work in our town, okay? But then they decide, you know what, this job, for whatever reason, is not working for me anymore. Maybe they have opportunity for promotion
Mhm.
in a Hopkinton town government, okay? They're gonna be still coming home to Westborough. And Westborough is gonna benefit from their homeownership here because they're gonna be paying taxes in Westborough. They're gonna be probably grocery shopping in Westborough. They're gonna be eating out in Westborough. They're gonna be going to other stores in Westborough. Whereas when they were only coming here to work, the likelihood of them being a contributing member of the economy is less so, in my opinion. I don't know if that's actually factual. But what I'm saying is that then if they have the opportunity to work in another town, for another town employment, a town office, and had a promotion, let's say, they're bringing in more money and therefore they're able to pay their bills more. Like, I would hate for it to be a restriction that
Right.
then creates lack of opportunity for someone.
You don't want it to be a millstone around.
We're
the
trying to create opportunity for town employees to live here, but then if you put restrictions on that they have to stay working here, it's just, I don't know. I have a,
no, I understand, I do, I
And,
understand. As
and
I
there
said,
may be
it
limits
is-
you could put in saying, well,
No.
you know, and if you leave
well,
within a
I
certain
think
amount of time.
I think there's a philosophical question as to whether or not you even want those limits. And
Right,
right,
I
that's,
tend to say, the point of the program is to help people who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford to live in Westborough
to live here.
to get over that final
That hump.
hurdle so they can.
yeah.
Well,
And we're offering that to the general public,
Mhm.
and we're also offering it to town employees because a belief that it's good to have town employees
Right.
who are able to live in the town. Now, I've been told by some educators that school teachers often don't like to live in the town they work in because
Because
when they're in the
when they
grocery
go
store-
grocery shopping.
Police
they get
officers too,
buttonholed.
But
police
others-
officers too, yeah.
I know.
Some
Yeah,
do,
yeah.
some, there's very, but that's personal
a separate
choice.
issue.
Yeah.
Could I tell you if I'm aware of employees who would jump at this chance? We don't know that yet, right? One of the questions is we're talking about this, that I will go to the town manager's office and see if it can be gathered, is just numbers, right?
I got those.
But you-
I did an analysis, and I forget it was, what,
It's basically just saying.
I went to Leah and I said, just give me the zip codes, no names, no addresses, the zip codes of where people live.
Right, that's fine. My ask is gonna be, if I said,
And it's amazing how,
if we say 120% AMI,
okay,
what's the count? I don't need names, I don't
Right,
need zip
sure,
codes.
sure. Yeah, no.
Is it 8 people, or is it 280 people, right, or 460?
yeah, that's better.
To say what's the potential pool of town employees who would qualify at this level?
Well, just to answer my own question, because I was throwing out the question without thinking about it. The qualification for this, whether you're a town employee or not, is about residency. It isn't about income.
Two different programs.
Two-
One is if you're a resident, you
You quali-
if
but you
you're
still
a
have to-
resident and have an income level that's within the income guideline, you qualify. This one here, town employee, if you're a town employee, not a resident,
Yeah,
and a different income level.
it can
you
be higher,
qualify. It's a different income level
Yep.
not specified here.
but it's
Yeah,
still, it's,
120, right? Yeah.
but, no, that's what
I mean-
I understand it's different, but you're still lower or middle income, whether you're, all the town employee really is getting, maybe you have a little slightly different threshold, but
your-
really it's just you don't need residency.
You don't
You're
need to be an
con-
existing resident of Westborough if you're a town
So
employee.
then that doesn't, yeah, then
What I
it's,
suggest,
yeah,
is
yeah.
we're trying to engineer the details at a level that is far too deep for where we're at.
Right.
It's,
Yeah,
is the basic idea of a plan of this sort, does it make sense? Sure.
Okay.
The next question is, what's it take to put a plan like this together? Quite a bit.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to present it today,
yes,
and then can I comment, one, conceptually, and basically get consensus to start working with MHP and to have the communication with the town for the town employee piece. And get feedback and input.
were you gonna say something, Ken? or-
Well, what I was gonna say is, like, what Alan is presenting here is really the beginning. Like
yeah.
Hank is saying also, let's just look at this, say, okay, fine, but if, you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a lot of time that's gonna have to go into this, because I'm just thinking of some of the stuff that, this isn't fair to this party, but fair to that, and so on and so forth. And it'll all get tweaked and whatever, but the most important thing is that Alan is putting together something that's offering to the people what we do, what we're here for. So we'll build on it as a team.
I think I'm interested, because, this gets into numbers and stuff like that, and I like working with numbers. I would be willing, or I'll open it up to anybody, to work with Alan. I think there needs to be some examples, like, okay, let's assume this person, that somebody can, let's run some numbers and say, oh, okay, this is what the benefit is to that individual and to the town. It can be inferred from that against these different programs. We need to collect data, exactly how many residents are AMI. I go around and when I run into police officers, not that that happens often, one of the questions I ask them is, where do you live? And, I was talking to one young, fairly young, he's probably been on for a couple of years. He lives in Ashland.
Yeah.
Would love to live in Westborough. Can't afford it. Okay? I think this also helps people. What I've seen as because I always talk to people about some of this, is the fact that you have, I'll use the word young couples, not that this would be limited to young couples, but it more likely would be used by them, where they're paying these rents in Metro West, not just Westborough, and they cannot save enough money for a down payment because so much is going towards rent. Okay, that they can't just get enough put away to get enough of a down payment with that. And I see that as, a really bad situation. So what happens is you don't get younger,
We-
starting out families, they can't build equity. Hank.
We gotta move on.
Yes,
I mean,
that's my job.
My suggestion is, Alan, you tell us what you can come and tell us what kind of help you need. And we'll provide the help. I mean, you got a pretty good understanding of what each person's expertise is.
I think this is a great idea.
So we can
Yes.
move on and get to the next item on the
Thank you.
agenda.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, yeah, we are running.
Do we need to
Tight.
move to accept the idea of the plan, or do we?
No,
We're good?
No,
Okay,
no.
all right,
No,
all right.
no.
Keep
We'll
going.
just continue to work it.
Sounds good, keep going.
Keep going,
Okay.
keep going, yeah. Good work, keep
Other
going.
projects.
Other projects and activities.
I can take this real
What
quick.
about height?
All right, you want to do it, Alan?
Yeah, so we have a number of other projects and activities that were discussed at our last meeting. The first is I was approached by the chair of the planning board, Mark Silverberg, as the planning
Yeah.
board, and he's on the committee related to the MBTA, housing initiative with the
Right.
state. They're planning how to comply and where density might be allowed.
This is the housing choice program.
The housing choice, the updated housing choice program, he sees a number of opportunities along East Main Street in the Gateway District, which would be first floor commercial retail, residential above. And he just wanted to meet with us to bounce ideas around, and gauge our interest in, if projects were identified, would we want to get involved to facilitate the affordable housing component. And so Nancy and I at the last meeting said we'd meet, hopefully end of next week, we'll
Always
sit
got
down
to-
for coffee with him.
Absolutely.
Informal idea, we'll report back. The Housing Partnership Committee is a town committee. It's statutorily required, it exists. It's designed to help private developers navigate the affordable housing permitting process and qualification process. It's a 5-seat committee. There are currently 3 members on the committee. They've not been meeting regularly. And so Leah is coordinating, she's on that committee. And she asked for my help at the last meeting. We're doing outreach, and we're going to try and sit down with get that committee to call a meeting. They have help them with some administrative things like electing a chair, helping them recruit to fill seats and get that functional so that they're operating effectively and are a viable partner for us as well. And then Kate asked about housing caseworkers and what role we could have in doing that. So I know you're,
Through youth.
so here it's on the agenda. Surprise.
Yeah, no,
Well-
I saw that. I don't have much to report.
Okay.
I have some examples of what a housing caseworker would be, or
Yeah,
what a
could
housing.
you, in
Share
60
it.
seconds?
We share it when we get a chance, right?
Yeah, I'll share it with you when I have more of a
Okay,
clearer
fine,
picture.
next
But
time.
I do want to
Next
just
time.
mention that there's a big change happening in Youth and Family Services. Kara Presley, the director of Youth and Family Services, has resigned, or will be
Oh.
resigning at the end of this month. And so there's a vacancy there. And so there's, just that, is that there's a vacancy there, and then, so that's gonna be hard, but also,
Town manager hire, I'm
Opportunity.
sorry, town manager hires that position?
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe so.
Okay, but doesn't matter.
Yeah, but to me, just start educating me.
Yeah. We've been
kinda
working
really
great with
dumb
them
about
on the Westborough station, the residents Westborough station. We got the letter out, trying to tell people, you got a year, and we didn't get that, but go ahead. Alan, anything?
Okay.
You'd, High Street?
So a while ago, we had looked at the High Street property, High Street Extension property. It's 45 High Street Extension. Here it is, a snapshot of the online GIS map. This is not the overlay. So the outline of the property is actually this thin black line. The red square is a part I'm highlighting. I'll get to the why in a minute. And the odd shape with the hashes in it is wetland, or
Right.
in some way, wetland, floodplain, protected, can't build on it, there's some setback requirements, et cetera, et cetera. And as I was thinking about this property, we had talked, there was some discussion about about residents of the apartment
Area.
complex behind,
May
interested in
vary to
connecting
that
to it
north.
and putting in a playground.
Yep.
That's really hasn't moved anywhere. We know from the prior conversations, the rec commission really didn't have plans. There wasn't really any community involvement that was moving forward. So I came up with a concept on how we might take advantage of this property and get more than just a duplex in. And this would be a friendly 40B, be very clear. It would also be trying a new concept for Westborough, but a concept in housing that's actually been around since post-World War II and has been successfully used in other communities to create affordable housing. So drum roll. Here is my, oh, I better make it a little smaller. The extent of my drafting skills is in that square area, basically creating what's known as a courtyard community.
Yep.
Where you have small homes that effectively share common area for outdoor recreation and outdoor space.
And these would be basically similar in size to what we have on Baylor Avenue, roughly, because
Yeah,
that's.
1,200
roughly
square
100.
feet.
So
is
what
a-
I,
a
so
smarter home.
what I
Yeah,
did.
yeah, yeah, no, I'm
So
just
I used,
telling.
yep, as a point of reference, it'd be roughly that size. The shape would be different. I actually went online, and if you Google house plans, 900-1,200 square feet, you come up with a whole list of companies that have hundreds of floor plans and layouts.
Are they like almost prefab kind of?
Well, no, these are just design.
Just designs, okay, okay.
So like for $2,000, you can buy architectural drawings, plans, materials list, and even some of them come with guidance on order of construction. They are cute and beautiful
They're
bungalow.
adorable.
Yep.
Adorable.
Oh, you just
one-
did it.
and that's one
That's just
of,
one.
there's like thousands of layouts.
Yeah, they are.
And what I found is in that 1050 to 1175 square foot range, you can have a very functional 2-bedroom, 2-bath home with open floor plan, kitchen, living area, laundry room with storage. And if you think about our preferred.
On slab?
On slab, 1 story. Easily, there are plans for fully handicap accessible versions of these, of different layouts and things of that nature as well. And so the thought would be, the general thought would be, effectively, and it begs some questions, and this is sort of why I was thinking garden style, is would we need to subdivide the property?
Right.
Okay, which would be very non-conforming. Or is there a way to treat this as campus, because we now have a campus-style zoning in Westborough, which was intended for commercial buildings, but
Oh,
if these,
yeah.
but if these are rental, then it's a commercial development, right? I mean, it's a type of residential, but, so this would be friendly 40B special permit stuff. But the thought would be to build 4, possibly 5 bungalow homes with common space. And because it's garden style homes, the parking for the units would be immediately off-street.
Right.
So you don't have to worry about driveways and
Garages.
garages and stuff like that. Maybe a portico over
Yeah.
the units so that it still blends in with the neighborhood. But
A portico over the parking.
over the parking, right?
Yeah.
And as after I drew this, I thought, okay, I did this rough layout, right? You know, I suspect, for example, that the parking might have to be wider and there might have to be a sidewalk wide enough to put a fire truck on, so that you could get a fire truck to the back of the property.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so there's lots of things we need to think about on a property like this. My ask for us, and this may fall to Hank, because he loves going to the one-stop shop, or in Ken, would be, but I wouldn't start there. I would start with an informal conversation with the chair of the planning board, and maybe go to the planning board.
Yeah,
to
a
see
lot of coffee is gonna
Right,
be
so-
drunk
I
here.
tell you.
But basically say, this is a housing concept, right?
Yeah.
This is a housing concept for moderate low and moderate income housing that,
Starter homes.
that are lacking in our community.
God bless you.
It's higher density, so it's definitely friendly 40B, and if it's affordable, but special permit as well. And is this a concept that the planning board would support?
Yeah, and is it preferable to a four-unit common wall, a single building, four-unit development, which,
And part of my thought, and then the question for DPW, is this for single-family homes?
Right,
yeah,
that's
I mean,
where,
For
'cause it-
multi-units?
Is it for single-family homes?
I mean,
'Cause if
could
this
you,
is
could you,
for,
could you sewer permit it as four single-family
that-
homes?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, that's how you get around it, otherwise you can't do it.
Get to me.
What do you mean?
Here's, you could do it this way, or you could do it as four homes with with common walls, and we could
Yeah,
learn what the
semi-detached.
trade-offs are.
When you say common walls,
I
meaning
mean, it's a
together.
condominium,
Yes,
I mean, you
a
could-
Yeah,
semi-attached.
like duplexes or something, or,
Yeah, like they
it's a-
do in
It's a
England.
quadruplex instead of a duplex, that's all. But,
Well-
I mean, this, you could condominiumize the land. It's common, it's ordinary common to condominiumize the land. It's called a homeowners association.
yeah. Hey, Joe.
So you could do that when you if you make it a fourplex, there's a bunch of code things that trigger that make it a bit expensive. I mean, you have to put sprinklers in, you have to put in firewalls, et cetera. It
If
may
it's
be-
a fourplex together.
Yeah, I mean, it
Well-
may be less expensive to build this way, but it may be easier to permit I don't know, I mean,
So
you
the-
start
the-
asking all those
the-
questions.
the thought of doing garden style is actually very specific
Yep.
because
Yeah.
neighborhood feel,
Mhm.
bungalow-style homes would be smaller versions of existing style homes in the neighborhood.
In that neighborhood.
Right.
But,
So we wouldn't be going multi-story. And it sort of says that if we do this on a small scale here, if a larger property becomes available, it doesn't have to be a multi-story, multi-unit, multi-family building.
No, I
We
mean,
could look at other, and there are studies out that show that even nationally, that often what, in urban planning and suburban planning, what's missing is this type of housing.
Mhm.
It's the missing middle of affordability.
Yep.
It's above, it could be affordable housing, capital A, capital H, it can also be moderate income, but it's a style of housing that gives you the single-family home without, the 1.5 acre minimum lot size, or the
Right.
3/4 acre
Right.
minimum lot size. And could we, in theory, I was playing with my boxes, because that's the extent of my drafting skills. In theory, you might get 6 homes on, given the shape of the property, and I don't know all the wetland rules, you could get 5 or 6 homes, but my thought was, you want open space for play area
Yep.
and
Right.
Yeah.
for quality of life aspects, so you don't want to overdevelop. But this is
Put a swing set in here and say, oh, we've addressed the the recreation.
This is basically a cluster, I mean, the town has cluster zoning.
Yeah.
Yep.
And this is a modified version of cluster zoning.
Yeah.
I mean, the setbacks are much less than cluster zoning, the total area is much less than, but it's similar to a cluster zoning concept, so that we
Right.
can have a conversation of,
Right.
what-
This is a
would-
piece of
would there be
property we've
support
talked.
for that sort of an
Right.
approach, right?
And if you
Okay.
wanted one of the units to be fully handicap accessible,
Yeah,
then
you
one of
could
the
do
two
that.
closest to the street
Right.
would need a driveway,
Yeah, but you could do that, it wouldn't be, I
and
mean,
it could be
I mean,
modified.
doing
so.
handicapped accessible in 1,200 square feet, it's not.
Yeah, we're not talking about a
impossible.
massive amount, I don't know what the square footage or acreage is of that unit. This is something we've talked about, we have talked about this plot of land before.
I mean,
It's sort of a swell, it would have to be filled.
This may not be the best piece of land to do this on, but it doesn't matter, you're trying to understand the concept. Let's-
It's
you
downtown,
gotta
the
start
the
somewhere.
benefit is, it's right downtown, it's walkable to everything.
Yep.
We can put bungalow-style housing on, that piece of property is, it's
I mean, you
nothing to write home about.
I mean, it's something you could do on the 5 acres at Rogers Road, and put a whole lot of single, I mean, so just understanding what,
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, going through the
So-
learning process of learning about
so-
cluster zoning on a
Okay.
small
I like
lot.
this idea. I
Well,
have to go. If I leave, does
if-
that
if-
impact our
Do we need to-
quorum?
no.
not for the executive session.
So,
Everybody else was here for executive.
Yeah,
Okay.
consensus to just keep proceeding.
Keep pursuing
proceeding,
it.
I'll start
Ken,
talking to the
any
planning
thoughts?
people.
Because you're in
I'm just looking
construction.
at, like, the Google Earth end of it. I'm gonna take a ride over.
R-
but
Yeah,
I think-
ride by it.
Yeah, I think what's really good is that, again, Alan took the initiative to take his time and put some ideas together. And like, you know, reiterating what Hank said, it's like, again, it's a starting point. This is good. It's conceptual. Let's look at it. And I think everybody agrees,
Okay.
you know?
Um,
Bye.
I'm gonna
Could
turn
you
to the
take-
pumpkin too. Do you need me for the executive session?
Uh-huh.
Do you need me for the executive session? Because
It's gonna be very quick.
right, can we just jump
Why
in?
don't we jump right to,
Okay.
well, okay. What I would ask is, I would, you know, whether Hank wants, however much Hank wants to get involved. Alan, if you want to continue with this, I would ask, though, that you know, that between you.
Anyone who wants to work with me on it, let me
Yeah,
know.
well, it's always good to keep it not too big.
Not too big,
So, I would like to work with you on the starter,
Yep, and I'm
what are
gonna-
you, first time?
Yep,
If Ken and you and Hank, as time permits, can focus on this,
Yeah,
that would be great,
I think it's a great idea.
okay? You feel good, all right, with that. So let's go, I think that's it. We need a motion to go into executive session.
We move into executive session?
I don't know, I think
Yeah.
it's a little bit more.
yeah, under Mass General Law, Chapter 20A, Section 21A7, to act under the authority of the trustees to approve and release executive session minutes of December 14th, 2022.
Okay, we need to have a roll call vote to go into this executive session.
But you have to say that open meeting would be
Huh?
you have to make a determination if open meeting would be detrimental.
Yes, an open meeting might be detrimental to the discussion of this because of the nature of the acquisition, because it does deal with property acquisition. Okay?
And we're not reconvening.
And what?
We're not.
And we will not reconvene after this. I ask that Westborough TV, thank you for your service, and you can turn off the broadcast now, if you can, please.